Hi, my name is Aster Remaster. Usually I talk about musicals, but we're in a lull period, and I must live my truth. I've been a fan of Pokemon since literally before I can remember. I cannot comprehend a time in my life where I did not know what a Chikorita was. I started watching the show when I was 4 or possibly younger, and got my first game Fire Red when I was 6. This was the early 2000s. For those of you unaware, Pokemania crashed hard after 1999, and it became uncool pretty quick. If you were a fan of Pokemon between 2000 and 2010, you were a fan. Because of this, the brainworms ran deep. I listened to a lot of Pokemon music for many years. There are a lot of Pokemon songs that everyone seems to know. If you play the first season's theme song in a crowd of millennials, they'll start singing along and throw even more money at the 151 card set. Maybe they'll even beat up somebody in a Costco for it. Today, however, I'd like to talk about literally anything else other than that song. I want to talk about Pokemon music that piques my interest, from famous to obscure, from good to bad. These videos will be sorted by region, not generation, since remakes are involved. We're starting with Kanto. Filed under music where the comments section is filled with fanfiction about the 90s, Pallet Town is the theme for the titular starting area in Pokemon Red and Blue. Contextually, this song needs to fulfill two roles. It needs to represent a place to start and a safe, comforting place to come back to. Now, stick with me, but with that in mind, Pallet Town sticks out to me because it doesn't really do either of those things as far as composition goes. This is almost entirely due to the speed of the melody and the bass line. Too fast to feel comforting, too slow to feel exciting. The melody itself doesn't help here. It has a toy piano sound to it, higher pitched and youthful, but too youthful. It crosses that line into a preschool sound, especially with those underlying bouncy notes. You'll notice that in subsequent versions, like those in Gen 3 and Gen 4, they slow down the tempo and remove the alternating bass line. It makes a world of difference. Now it does feel comforting and peaceful. Simplicity can be more effective sometimes. Gen 3's version is the best one to my ears. Maybe that's the nostalgia talking, but the harmonies feel really nicely put together the whole way through. There's even this one part that has an almost somber feeling with a descending set of notes, which could reflect how this is a place you're going to leave. There's just more weight to it overall, I feel. That being said, I think Gen 4's version is great as well. I really like this combination of harp and horns to provide the high end and low end of the mix, while the main melody is taking the middle. The second part of the song feels a bit triumphant, which is a nice call to how Pallet Town is pretty late game in Heart Gold Soul Silver. Regardless, I'm sure saying that the Gen 1 version is the weakest one will get me at least one angry comment from someone who made their kid choose a starter plushie, then got mad they didn't choose Charmander. Gen 1's sound palette in general is very reverby and minimal. I guess they didn't figure that out yet, like how they couldn't figure out how to properly program a move with more than one sentence attached to it. They did, however, realize they can make some god-awful noises when they wanted to. Lavender Town's theme utilizes some of the worst sounds a Game Boy could make to great effect. A long-standing urban myth says that the original red and green version of the song caused Japanese kids to get sick or go insane. When I learned this as a kid, I tested it on myself, of course. Nothing happened. Or maybe it did, and that's why I'm the way I am now. The reason people said this is because of these absurd, high-pitched scrambled notes. Also, Town Creepy, There's Ghost, etc. And it is a creepy song. This plucked 4-note sequence that consistently plays in the background uses an uncomfortable set of intervals to make you feel like you're being watched or like something is creeping up behind you. To break this down, its first 2 notes are what's known as a perfect fifth. Starting from the root of a scale, 5 notes up is the 5th. It's very stable. Then it goes up to a 7th. This is a lot less stable because it's so close to being the conclusive sounding octave note. Then it goes down to a sharp 4th, which isn't even in the scale. So it starts stable, then becomes rickety, then completely falls out of line. It feels very wrong to our ears. And over that, we have the dirgiest dirge possible. The main melody is droning and dour. There's no peace in this, guaranteed by the use of unfulfilling harmonies and this buzzy synth. Lavender Town may be the most intentionally ugly song I've ever heard in a video game, and man does it work. This little town scared the stuffing out of me as a kid. And it must have scared the locals too, because they turned their pet cemetery into a radio station in time for Gold and Silver. They moved the graves, but the implications. Thanks for calling in to KLAV. What's your request? I'd love it if you played Bad Romance by Lady Gaga. It makes the ghosts in my living room stop flickering the lights. Sure thing, let's spin it. To reflect a change in industry from appeasing ghosts to injecting the Black Eyed Peas into Kanto's collective consciousness, the music of Lavender Town changed as well. Instead of being creepy, it's now in a major key and honestly boring. Not bad or anything, it's pretty peaceful, just not nearly as interesting. Another town theme that got noticeably changed between generations is Cinnabar Islands. In the Kanto-based games, Cinnabar has a fun and energetic little thing going on. The original composition is good on its own, but the Fire Red Leaf Green mix, adding a drum groove, a solid bass line, and removing the reverb that plagued most of Red and Blue's soundtrack, really brought it to another level by making the harmonies clearer and giving it a more defined sonic palette. It's lively and happy. Unfortunately for Cinnabar Island, it was built on an active volcano that decided to erupt before the events of Gold and Silver. As a result, everyone was forced to evacuate, including its gym leader, Blaine, who coped with the devastation by optimizing his fit and maximizing his swagger. Cinnabar, however, was left as a mound of barren rock. In Gold and Silver, this tragedy is reflected by having its theme changed to the chippy elevator music heard in Saffron City. Heart Gold Soul Silver, thankfully, corrected this by creating a simple xylophone version of the original song's main melody, because even though the city is lost, its spirit never truly goes away, like the dead Pokemon in Lavender Town. You know, I make fun of Gen 1 a lot, but I do have to admit, I'll never understand what it must have felt like to walk into the champion room after the Elite Four and seeing your rival standing in front of you, not knowing it was going to happen. Kind of a shame we didn't have Let's Players back then. The champion battle theme in Red and Blue does an impressive job at keeping its rhythm considering the lack of drums. Instead, it does what a lot of songs in the soundtrack does. Use bass lines that alternate between two notes over and over. Reverb does unfortunately make everything in this song kind of smear together, but as a composition, pretty good. The intro spiral lands on two sharp, staccato notes that build the foundation for the A part. It makes you feel laser focused, like everything else is falling away, and your attention is completely on this developing battle. There are definitely parts that are stronger than others, like this B part that feels a bit weaker. But I'd say it recovers here for this part that keeps getting higher and higher as the tension winds up for this kind of soaring final section. The Fire Red Leaf Green mix, I do have to say, is sadly destroyed by its own sound font. There are a lot of good ideas in there, like the chaotic drums or the way these horns bounce between your ears. But the guitar just sounds terrible. My favorite part of the song is the final section since it doesn't use the electric guitar. These very Hoenn-coded trumpets pair nicely with the sliding bass line. Black 2 and White 2 also have a mix of this song, and it makes choices. It's better, sort of. I don't like how they added sounds between the opening note pairs, because the silence between them is what really made them stand out. But the rest of it borrows ideas from Fire Red and Leaf Green, like the wild drumming and electric guitar that sounds better this time, marginally. It's fine. And of course, we can't forget about Let's Go. I mean, we can. I forgot about it until now, but how many of you actually noticed?
Hey, if you forgot it, it probably wasn't all that important.
Evolution in MIDI technology finally allowed this song to become more actualized. Just listen to this intro. I still think it's not at its full potential, though. Throughout the song, the drummer is a lot more measured, perhaps reflecting modern Game Freak's near inability to take a risk. The guitar MIDI finally sounds decent, even if it's underutilized. There's even a neat breakdown here. But other than that, I don't have much else to write home about. Overall, the original Red and Blue was a very experimental era for this game studio that had accidentally cobbled together a global phenomenon using duct tape and popsicle sticks. I don't think they were thinking that hard about the music. Some of these tracks sound outright random. Originally, I was going to call it here for Kanto music, but I would be remiss to skip over all the N64 games. So I'll mention one of them. Something worth appreciating about Pokemon Stadium's music is that it used different songs for each stage of the tournament formats it had. You'd have a songs for Battle 1 through 3, then one for Battles 4 through 6, then the semis, then the final. That's a fun detail. I only wish the horn midis weren't some of the worst I've ever heard, because some of these mixes of Gen 1 songs are actually pretty fun. Pokecup Battles 4 through 6 takes motifs from the Rocket Hideout theme and uses its tense melody to its advantage, adding rolling snare drums to keep it moving. There's a lot of back and forth with the horns, flicking around between directional panning so it feels like you're surrounded on all sides. I can appreciate that they were playing with some new ideas using the expanded sound capabilities of the N64. Stadium also had its own mix of the Kanto Champion theme. It is, once again, held back by some pretty awful virtual instruments, like, come on, how do you mess up piano this bad? But I like some of the ideas here. Staccato piano is an effective choice for those hits you hear throughout the song, although the pedal is on for this random section and I don't know why. The main part of the song, I guess you could say, gets this swell which makes it rich and resonant, and the piano comes back for a sweet little riff. In general, the Kanto Champion theme once again is able to sniff greatness, but is not able to actually get there. Maybe one day, it'll get it for real. Oh, Mewtwo gets its own theme in this game too. See, in the original Red and Blue, Mewtwo's theme is simply a pitched up, somewhat more intense version of the regular wild Pokemon battle theme, so it doesn't stick out to me. Although I will say it is very effective when you hear the intro thing that comes in and its higher pitch really freaks you out. Anyway, so Stadium gave Mewtwo a real battle theme, and it's something.
This is the most obnoxious thing I've ever experienced in my life.
I don't think they quantized this. Like, it's offbeat. The melody isn't matching up with the backing. What happened here? Is this on purpose? Like, is it supposed to have me on edge? It does, since it makes me feel like my vertigo is flaring up. It does go on rhythm later, but that makes me even more confused as to why the rest of the song sounds like a child banging on a Casio. It just isn't very good. It may be one of the weirdest and worst songs in the franchise, especially since it's supposed to be for Mewtwo, the final boss of Gen 1, as well as a philosopher of his time.
I see now that the circumstances of one's birth are irrelevant. It is what you do with the gift of life that determines who you are.
Treat him better. Now, I wasn't originally going to discuss anime music for Kanto or for this series because many of us have had it beaten into our skulls for the past 20 years, but we gotta talk about this. I need to mention Pokemania again. I want to bring up the soundtrack for the first movie because that thing is nuts. Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears, NSYNC, Bewitched, these were huge names at the time. The lead single, Don't Say You Love Me, was also the debut single of a Norwegian duo called M2M, and that thing went to number 21 on Billboard. Pokemon had a group no one had heard of sitting up there with Jennifer Lopez and TLC. Diane Warren worked on this soundtrack. That's insane. She was one of the most influential songwriters of her era. Pokemon had only been released outside Japan for a handful of months, and they made that decision. It's like if a movie about Labubus came out in 2026 and they had Max Martin on the soundtrack. So, do I remember any of the music from that soundtrack off the top of my head? Only 2 songs. They were Brother My Brother and If Only Tears Could Bring You Back. Neither of them are particularly special, but I guess I liked them well enough when I was in middle school. They both kind of have that, like, Christian R&B vibe, you know, melodramatic and easy to listen to. Great for a 12-year-old with no taste. Don't Say You Love Me, unironically, is decent turn of the millennium pop. It's got fun production, the use of minor key keeps things more emotionally dynamic. I'm not well versed on late 90s music, but I will say this wouldn't be out of place on Y2K Disney Channel. The Christina Aguilera song is called We're a Miracle and is another example of Aguilera's voice being used for evil. She sounds pained singing this. I don't know if she enjoys singing. The Britney song, Soda Pop, is not something I'd ever willingly listen to again, but she did feel good enough about it to put it on a legitimate album, her debut one in this case. This cannot be said about the NSYNC song, Somewhere Someday, which only saw the light of day again on disc 2 of a greatest hits record 15 years later. And those are some Pokemon songs from Kanto I find interesting. Not a very long video for Gen 1 because, like I said, I don't think they thought too hard about the soundtrack back when the franchise was just Game Boy monster collecting game. Keep your eye out though, because I do plan on covering all the regions and maybe some side games eventually. I hope you enjoyed this diversion from my usual subject matter. Subscribe if you'd like more musical analysis. Have a wonderful day.